Hey, Joyful Journeyer, Anita Adams here, your host. I recently finished reading The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer, which deeply intrigued me while also giving me another perspective on simultaneously leaning in and letting go. Now, the premise of the book is both simple and profound. Let go of your personal preferences and say yes to what life presents. Instead of resisting circumstances that don't align with your plans, Singer suggests that we accept what is unfolding and trust the process. Time and time again throughout the book, he describes how opportunities, people, and experiences appeared in his life that he never would have chosen for himself, yet led him down remarkable paths. According to Singer, it is often our attachment to what we want that keeps us stuck. As I read the book, I found myself nodding in agreement. I could see examples throughout my own life where things didn't unfold according to my plans, yet somehow led to experiences richer than anything I could have orchestrated myself. For instance, years ago, I wanted to be an actor and I pursued that dream with fervor. However, one day I found myself at a crossroads where life presented a different opportunity, one that eventually led me to build a film promotional agency that became a well-loved and respected national organization. Then there was the time I wanted to move to India for a year. Then the pandemic arrived and those plans disappeared overnight. Instead, life presented an opportunity to live in a beautiful seaside cottage where I began hosting retreats and writing my book, Whispers of the Soul. More recently, I had a deep desire to live in Portugal for at least 6 months. Instead, after only 3 months, circumstances forced us to leave, leading to an unexpected cycling adventure that took us through Albania, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Turkey. A journey that eventually became a family adventure with our adult children and created beautiful memories that we'll treasure forever. Again and again, life seemed to have plans that differed from my own. As I reflected on Singer's message, however, a question emerged for me. If we are supposed to let go of our wants and desires, does that contradict what I teach in my book, Whispers of the Soul? After all, one of the central practices I encourage is asking yourself three important questions. Who am I? What do I really want? And why does it matter? So I asked myself, would I change anything in my book after reading The Surrender Experiment? The answer is no. While I agree with Singer's philosophy that we must let go of our wants and lean into the unfolding of what the universe presents, I don't believe our first task is letting go of our desires. Our first task is discovering them. Many people spend their lives pursuing goals they never consciously chose. They are chasing expectations handed to them by parents, teachers, culture, social media, or society at large. They become disconnected from their own inner knowing and lose touch with what genuinely matters to them. So before we can surrender our attachments to what we want, we must first know what we truly want. Otherwise, we're not surrendering authentic desires. We're simply drifting through life according to someone else's script. That is why learning to quiet the mind is so important. Singer speaks about meditation throughout his book. I often talk about silence, solitude, stillness, and listening to the whispers of the soul. Different language, perhaps, but pointing towards the same practice. When we create space within ourselves, something deeper begins to speak. We start to recognize what feels meaningful, what feels aligned, and what feels true. And once we become clear about those things, then comes the next step. Take action. You must move toward the life you desire. Follow the dream, book the ticket, start the business, write the book. And while doing all that, remain willing to let go of everything. That's the distinction I found myself arriving at after reading Singer's work. We don't need to let go of our desires. We need to let go of our attachment to how those desires must unfold. Or said another way, honor the desire by taking action and release the attachment. My experience in Portugal provides a perfect example. Living there for 6 months wasn't some passing fantasy. It was a dream my husband and I had been working towards for years. We planned carefully, we saved money, we researched locations, we found affordable accommodations. We completed the visa paperwork months in advance. Then circumstances completely outside our control intervened. The war in Ukraine created a surge in visa applications, and our extension wasn't approved in time. Even while we were in Portugal, I explored every possible avenue for extending our stay. I did everything I could. And when the answer remained no, yeah, I was disappointed and frustrated and sad. This wasn't what I wanted. Eventually, I came to terms with it by recognizing there was nothing left for me to do. The situation was simply beyond my control. So I surrendered. Not by pretending I wasn't disappointed or by pushing away my feelings or even by telling myself everything happens for a reason. I surrendered by allowing my feelings to move through me and accepting reality as it was. Then I asked a simple question. Okay, universe, what now? Remarkably, the answer arrived almost immediately. The next day, while filling up at a gas station, my husband and I struck up a conversation with a stranger who enthusiastically suggested we visit Albania. I didn't even know where Albania was, but he spoke about it with such passion that we became curious. When we got back to our apartment, we started researching and quickly became intrigued. The landscapes were stunning. The history so different from other European countries we've visited, and the costs were, well, surprisingly very affordable. Before long, a new possibility was taking shape, and what unfolded became one of the most memorable adventures of our lives. Now, I want to be clear here. One of the reasons I appreciate Singer's teachings is that surrender is not dependent on life immediately giving us something we like better. In my stories, and in many of the stories Singer shares in his book, things worked out beautifully, often in ways neither of us could have imagined. But surrender is not about trusting that life will always replace one desire with another more appealing option. It is about trusting that life is guiding us exactly where we need to go for our own growth and evolution, even when we cannot see the purpose in the moment. Yes, it is painful when relationships end, dreams don't materialize, illness arrives, or loss enters our lives. None of us willingly choose these experiences. Yet when I look back on the most difficult seasons in my own life, I can also see that they shaped me in profound ways. They stretched me, humbled me, deepened my compassion, and invited me to become more of who I was capable of being. Perhaps this is what surrender ultimately asks of us. Not that we believe every circumstance is pleasant, not that we pretend pain isn't painful, but that we trust there is meaning in the unfolding, that even life's greatest challenges can serve our awakening, and that the universe may see a larger picture than we do. So the practice of surrender becomes two things at once. Trusting that life is moving us towards our highest good, while also meeting this moment exactly as it is, without resistance or argument, and without insisting that reality should be different. That, I believe, is the deeper invitation. Now, another idea from Singer's book that I want to touch on briefly and that continues to intrigue me is his commitment to saying yes. That, in many ways, is the essence of what he calls the surrender experiment. Whenever life presents an opportunity, especially one he didn't initially want, he notices his resistance and then intentionally moves towards the experience rather than away from it. Again and again, he discovers that what initially looks inconvenient, uncomfortable, or undesirable often opens doors he never would have found otherwise. And I have to say, this feels like a growing edge for me. Surrender has been a theme in my retreats, my coaching, and my own spiritual practice for years. But Singer's version of surrender, actively saying yes to what life presents, even when it doesn't match your preferences, feels like another level of the practice. So I've decided to run my own surrender experiment. When resistance shows up, I want to get curious. I want to notice where life might be nudging me. And I want to ask whether my resistance is protecting me from something genuinely unsafe or simply keeping me inside my comfort zone. And if it's safe to do so, I want to practice saying yes. I'm genuinely curious to see where that will lead. If this idea resonates with you, I encourage you to pick up a copy of The Surrender Experiment. And I also want you to begin or continue the practice I talk about in my own book, getting clear on what you truly want. Ask yourself, who am I? What do I really want? And why does it matter? Because clarity comes first. And from the clarity, we can move into life fully, on purpose, and with intention. And then, when life inevitably presents something different than what we planned, we can loosen our grip on the outcome and meet what is unfolding. Honor the desire, release the attachment, and stay open to where life leads next. Thanks for being here, Joyful Journeyer. I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.